Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Munoz. I am the creator of Starseed Sigil here on Facebook as well as on YouTube. It's part of Mystical Signatures. Today, I want to discuss the first ET race in Chapter 1 of Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, The Ultimate Guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics by Craig Campobasso. Now, this book is a pretty interesting book, and I've learned a lot of information from it. And I'm going to try to base and put it, his narrative of what he's done in his research, and put it toward how I have had it fit into my life. How I have received some validations, not from every race that's out there, but there's some interest. But before I go further into that, I just want to let everybody know that the author, um, this is his information that he gleaned from all the personal interviews and research that he has done. I do not say that he's 100% correct or 100% wrong. There's that in between zone that I really truly believe he's in. It's the same with myself. I'm in my zone of what I believe. I think we each have our own perception of what is truly going on out there and who these entities are that we're interacting with. Now, a little bit of information about the author was put into the beginning of the book and how he kind of came into the awareness of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, as well as a history, and it's a very interesting history that correlates with mine. The author was adopted at age 1. He became aware of that adoption at age 12. And then later on, he would search for his biological father, only to find out in 2019, when a genealogist located him, that he had passed in 2006. The blessing from all this for him was that he actually found out his father had a half brother who was able to fill in some blanks for the author. Now, the author, his father was Fred Verow, and his father happened to join the Air Force. And between 1952 and 1970, he worked for Project Blue Book. And his job was to identify whether UFOs were a threat to national security. After dismantling Blue Book, he went into the film industry as a set builder. The author, as his biological father, was interested in UFOs and also worked in the film industry. So there was a correlation between the two of them, which was very interesting for me because the fact is, like him, I myself was separated from my father before I was born, only to find out about him at age 14 and met him personally at 17. The only difference is that my father had not passed. So I got to have some interactions that he was able to get from his biological dad. From my understanding, from my connection with my biological father, and it sounds like with him and his father, that there is a connection to the phenomenon, especially in the realm of DNA and genetics. And he does get a little bit into that in the introduction. He talks about how the various ETs are interested in the DNA and they look at the DNA and work with the DNA. And that might explain a lot about how we came together, how it all worked about, especially with my dad, because my dad joined the Air Force, but he also worked in the military industrial complex for the majority of his career. So there's some kind of thing going on here, and that's really stood out to me. I couldn't believe it because I've heard other people's stories, but nothing that correlated so closely to mine. In the introduction, he will talk about the genetics, the DNA, and how the various groups are interested in it. He will indicates there are benevolent as well as malevolent ETs. His information is, as I said, compiled by research and interviews, and they all discuss good and bad ETs. which again aligns more with my understanding of everything, because as growing up, as experiencing, as with discussions with my dad, there are good and bad in all things. And just like the yin and yang, you have light and darkness, you have sun, and then you have moon. There's a balance. There is always a balance. But what I want to delve into today is the first group. The first group in his book is called the Agarthans. In the book, I also want to let you know that he addresses their universal origin, physical characteristics, belief system, cosmic agenda, technology, conscious ability, and dimensional capacity. With the Agarthans that he started with, they are considered Earth citizens. They came here approximately 250,000 years ago and seeded the Lemuria world. Then Atlantis came in 128,000 years ago, but they are all part of the Agarthans. Agartha is also known as Shambhala below the Himalayas, but there's also two entrances to this location on North and South poles, and there is a couple of capitals that are connected that he discussed. Posid, which is an Atlantean capital, is beneath Mato Grosso in Brazil. And then there's Telos, the Lemurian capital, which is beneath Mount Shasta. Now, he describes the inner earth view of Agartha in his book, which he appoints the fact that only by permission can one go inside to this area. Side note, Admiral Byrd apparently did get to fly into the South Pole and was able to see this. You can look up more about him on a Google search. The location is stated to have 3/4 of land and 1/4 of water. There are ocean, lakes, rivers, and ponds. And the use of hydroponics is being implemented by them to produce the food source that they require. Their light source happens to be an inner, non-blinding sun that is synchronized with our sun. He describes various shades of colors within the internal domain, specifically depending on daylight to nighttime and how the interchanging in the colors go. Now, he does talk a little bit of Telos, the Lemurian capital. He talks that in that capital position, that the sun is actually a bunch of crystals positioned high in a cave, and discusses the designs of their homes, which are very similar to us. Now, the homes, he talked about Greek type, Adobe type, and another type. But again, they're like our construction. But unfortunately, he doesn't share much about Posid and the Atlantean capital. In the book, he states that Agartha happens to be the cradle of our civilization. And so my question would be, does this mean we are Agarthan lineage? But it gets even deeper at this point, because as I'm continuing to move into the storyline that he has on the ET itself, he starts talking about their physical characteristics. And they are humanoid, average height 6 to 8 feet. Some can go upwards to 21 feet. They have fair skin tones in Lemuria and a little bit darker skin tone in Atlanteans. It allows them to blend very well with surface humans. So, you may run into one and not even know it. And could my experience in 1984 have to do with the Agarthan too? Because I ran into a being that looked very humanoid, walked a little bit differently, but he showed characteristics that were way above my understanding of this world at the time. Now, he also goes into some belief systems, the cosmic law of one, we're one, serve one. Telos is said to have the Adama, the ascended Melchizedek master or high priest, and Terra Ra, a high priestess. He talks about training in the ancient Melchizedek order. And I did some research on Melchizedek because I want to know a little bit about who this was or what this was. And Merriam-Webster Dictionary says, as a noun, a priest king of Jerusalem who prepared a ritual meal for Abraham and received tithes from him. But then he goes on to say, or in the dictionary, it says that as an adjective of or relating to a higher order of the Mormon priesthood. Now, this is when my interest peaks up. Is there a connection with Mormonism with the Agarthans? I continue to read. Then he explains another aspect of them that included the Venus, the planet, is actually where the Melchizedek order hub is. Basically, the order lives on Venus. Venus is considered a planet of love and harmony. So is the Melchizedek order based on these concepts? Those are some questions I had. We're not only having this group, Agarthans, here in inner Earth, at one point living on outer Earth, but now connected to Venus. Well, then with the Melchizedek training, I read that there's an angelic core order, and that's just another aspect of them, another training for them. Unfortunately, upon my research, I found very little about that, though I plan on doing more in the future. So my question concerns the connection between angels of the Bible and the angelic core order, and the possible link to Joseph Smith and Mormonism, because as I continue to read, I found out that not only do they have these orders, but those orders teach live-in bonded relationship situation where an Agarthan can have 5 live-in bonded relations, but only one be in a sacred marriage. And when you start looking at that and you're thinking, okay, well, Mormonism over here, they have what's called the plural marriage. And then you have the bonded marriage over here. The difference is in a plural marriage, the male is able to have children with all of the wives, whereas in this order, they can only have children with the sacred wife, the sacred marriage. And I thought that was extremely big in interest in this situation, especially with Agartha, but it gets even deeper as I continue to look in the text. When I was looking at this, I went ahead and pulled up Wikipedia to find out what the Mormon practice of plural marriage was officially introduced by Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, in July 12th, 1843. Of interest, the angel that Joseph Smith talked to at the time that gave him the tablets that created the whole Mormon faith that took them to Utah was an angel by the name of Moroni. And it says in the Britannica that Moroni was an angel or resurrected being who appeared to Joseph Smith on September 21st, 1823. Of interest to me, it took 20-year span from the time that Moroni first connected with Joseph Smith in, I believe, from my understanding, a cave, to creating the plural marriage. So in that 20 years, was Mr. Smith actually communicating on a more regular basis with Moroni, and was Moroni an actual Agarthan? Then he went on in his little discussion about how they have long lives, and they talk about how they're young or get their formal education between 20 and 22. However, they did indicate, or he indicated, that some start earlier, and I believe that it is just on a case-by-case basis. There was a sealing of the connection of Mormonism when he went into the fact that Agarthans had an undisclosed primary base north of Salt Lake City, Utah. That would connect why Joseph Smith took all of his followers to Utah and moved to that area, because if he is really truly having a relationship with a angelic type being or an Agarthan or Melchizedek order, whomever it was, being closer to a base would give them adequate connection to him to teach them what they wanted him to learn. As I continue down and read further into the book, he begins to talk about the cosmic agendas. It included a starseed alignment program for consciousness increase. They believe that if enough humans can integrate and get a higher consciousness, they can have a unified Earth, accepting above and below, accepting everything together. And the Agarthans with other ET races are assisting Earth to this new position. And in doing so and bringing us up, it's going to catapult the Earth into a new sector, as it is called in the book, upon a dimensional shift of our consciousness by moving forward. Now, today, we as humans, most of us, are learning how to increase our vibration. Those of us who are opening up and accepting more possibilities. And we're doing this through the studies of how vibration can help affect us as individuals. Also, scientifically, they are finding out more that we are vibrational beings, and the vibration, we emanate it and we receive it, and it works. And you can increase yourself in a more positive way, but you can also decrease yourself in a very negative way. And there are numerous videos you can find out on YouTube about the herd sophageo and much more about this situation. You have many belief systems, many religions, many followings that follow energy. And it's just of total interest at this point. I'm probably going to get so much more in depth into this in the future. There are multiple groups on social media networks that are building themselves around this, including myself. When I'm talking about the light language or the sigils, as I'm calling them, there's a vibration behind it. But where does it come from? What is it about? Well, that's when he goes into stating that this group is a member of a galactarian alignment of space people and planets, a universal alliance that works for the all universal kinds. To me, that indicates the Galactic Federation that everybody's talking about. He states that this galactarian alignment's home base happens to be the interior Saturn. So now we have Earth, we have Venus, and now we're bringing in Saturn. And spiritually, Saturn represents maturity, responsibility, discipline, stewardship. And this is from Jennifer Freed, PhD, a psychological astrologer, the author of Use Your Planets Wisely. The energy surrounding the planet indicates that the planet itself has twice the amount of energy energy into space than it receives from the sun. So it's sending out more than it's receiving. And I find that of interest. And they just start discussing infrared wavelengths of 20 to 100 micrometers. And this difference indicates that Saturn is like Jupiter, possesses a source of internal heat. Again, Agarthan here on Earth, in the inner Earth, they have a heat, they have a source, they have a light. They're able to grow foods through hydroponics. So is this the same type of system and the same type of internal heat that they really don't have to rely upon the sun to get what they need to survive in those environments? I find that of interest. He would go into some bullet trains and tunnels and how they built them and how their technology can create a smooth outer shell that protects it. He also talks about how the tunnels are so dark that you can't see through them. But an Agarthan who walks through them, the heat that emanates from them lights it up. It just lights up. He talks about their types of ships. They have galactarian motherships, starships, thought ships, fleet ships, and scout ships, connected to a supercomputer system based on organic conscious technology. Now, I find this of interest because organic conscious technology hit home because back in, I believe it was 2018, I had a conversation with David Adair. And David Adair talked about how the ships were organic. He discussed touching one of them and knew it was a living, breathing mechanism. Then the author would again go into talking about discus-shaped ships known as the silver fleets. And to me, when I'm thinking about the Tic Tac videos, are those considered the silver fleets? Now, I know that these ET groups have multiple of the same ships, the same type of ships. So when we're discussing them, just because I'm saying Silver Fleet maybe is the Tic Tac doesn't mean it's actually connected to the Agarthans and not another race of ET. It's just interesting to the fact that they call them a discus-shaped ship known as the Silver Fleet. And it just brings up that Utah video where it's just going across the screen. So after he goes through all of that, he then talks about their conscious abilities. They have full consciousness. They're sovereign. They're telepathic. They speak Star Nation dialects, which is the light language, and sacred solar languages, as he calls it. I never knew there was a difference, okay, between light language and sacred solar, or Star Nation dialects and sacred solar. It's two different concepts, but they could be one. We just have yet to recognize it. Now, he did discuss how these languages such as Sanskrit, Egyptian, Hebrew, and ancient Celtic inherited a few words from it. I would like to probably know more about what the words were and where the information came about and where he got it, or anybody else has talked about it. I know that the starseed sigils of light have an ancient connection. I've always felt that connection. It's similar to Reiki. I know that was an ancient connection that came out when the Reiki was built. So I am wondering if what is happening is either we're picking up on this light language or light symbols, the sigils, and we're bringing it forward to the world to try to help elevate. I don't know. I don't know if we're part of that program or part of that. It sounds like there's so many involved that who is behind it all, I can't tell you. Again, we come down to this big connection with Mormonism, the fact of Moroni. Was he an angelic? Was he a Melchizedek? He was in a cave, which would signify possibly Agartha. You know, Joseph Smith, the fact that he moved all his followers into Utah where they have an undisclosed base. There's just so much there that I want to delve farther into and will in the future. But right now, the focus is trying to go through these ET that he has listed in the book. There's approximately 82 in the book itself, and I'd like to go through each of them. And I want to know more about all this. And that's what I'm hoping this will do for each one of you that listen to this, is maybe open up the thought or the discussion about what's really truly going on, who these individuals are, how they interact or work within our lives, because this is something I've been searching out forever. I had a Air Force colonel ask me, wouldn't you like to be able to prove that they exist? And I'm like, no, I want to know why they're here. You know, it's not about proving, it's about understanding. And that's where I'm at. So I just want to end with the author who concludes that the Agarthans, are a multi-dimensional being. They can move in and out of our reality. And I'd like you to think of another thing. Would this indicate Sasquatch as being similar because of the Lemurian capital of Mount Shasta? And how does Sasquatch play into all this? How do angels play into all this? How do demons play into all this? How do devils play into I mean, there's just so much to get into. And I'm just hitting the top of the surface on this right now. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you would like to put at the bottom of this video, please do so. Just understand anything that's negative in approach will more than likely be deleted or taken off, because this is about elevating, not destroying. So I appreciate your time. I thank you. Have a great week. and many blessings to you all. So there's so much to consider. Until next time, blessings.